is the Anfield Wrap. It's Neil Atkinson, joined by John Gibbons, by Paul Senior and by Rob Gutmann on a Monday morning. Everyone's fresh as a daisy, given the fact that Liverpool played on Saturday evening, 5:30, against West Ham United. There's a lot to look forward to on the horizon. The games come quick at this time of year and they're all significant. Inter Milan at home on Tuesday night as well. That is coming. Everything you need around all of this is on the Anfield Wrap, all the build-up. We'll have Under the Lights for you on that. We'll have a review looking back at West Ham. There'll be all of that on the audio. Video preview to come as well around the Inter Milan game. The absolute business. Download the app, use the tokens, have a little play around, enjoy everything the Anfield Wrap offers during this season that feels momentous. And it was a game that felt momentous, Paul. It was all go for a 1-0. And by the time the final whistle goes, it was a 1-0 you gave a big one about, just like the manager did.
Yeah, they all feel massive, don't they, at this time of the year? But this one in particular, because it was the one we done an overview show on the Anfield Wrap last week, and you see that it's a difficult fixture, but you brush past it. You never see a conceivable idea where you won't win, and then the game starts happening, and you think, oh, this is a much harder fixture than I had in my head. And to be fair to West Ham, they gave really as good as they could have got. We look like a team, I felt, that have been playing a lot of football, and we've had some difficult fixtures, and that League Cup, the FA Cup game in the week was just another one where you didn't know who was going to play. It was just a case of getting 11 capable bodies out, wasn't it? But West Ham, with their form recently, you thought going into the game, they're not quite the formidable side that we played at maybe their ground, and I think they still show that there's still a little bit about them.
I think there's a lot about them, John, and I think one of the things that we need to bear in mind about our team and our performance is that the opposition get to do stuff too. And they've got a lot of players who, in different ways, are quite difficult to deal with. Bowen is a footballer who's difficult to deal with. He's been great for the last sort of 6 months or so. Antonio is a player who's gone through a bit of a barren spell on the one hand, but you can't keep him out of a game. And I think that the way in which the game goes, West Ham, they're kept alive in it a little bit by Liverpool, and then they realise that this game is there for them. And I think that West Ham do come away from the game with a lot of credit.
Yeah, I mean, the fifth in the table, and they've beat us this season in the league, and how many teams can say that? Do you know what I mean? Is it just them? Have we lost another one? Leicester, yeah. So 2 teams have beat us this season, and they're one of them. And so, they are good. And I think sometimes, it's like Paul said, you go into it and think, oh, West Ham at home, do you know what I mean? It's you're beating West Ham in your head rather than the actual reality of West Ham, which is a team who are fifth in the table, who are going well, and even when they're not at the best, they're still a bit of a pain. And that's what they were. Really. That said, I thought Liverpool played well first half and should have been, 2 or 3 up, but the fact that we couldn't do that just gave them the encouragement to get back into it, and then obviously it ends up, being a little bit nervy. But I thought Liverpool were better than them in terms of the quality we were showing, on the football pitch. We just couldn't put it to bed for a variety of reasons, and then they sort of got into it and obviously created really good chances of their own.
It's a funny Liverpool performance, Rob, in that first half especially, it verges repeatedly on genuine excellence. It just never quite comes to fruition. There is the goal. The goal's a good goal as well. It's a better goal on television and on replay than it looked in the ground. In the ground, it didn't look like a cross in the ground. It looked like a shot. You get in, you see it, and you go, no, he knows exactly what he's doing there. He knows where he's putting it. All of that said, then you were thinking, right, Liverpool are going to go and find another level, and they nearly do. If Salah takes one of those opportunities, maybe the game is then a different game, and we'd be purring about this Liverpool performance a little bit more. That's the way it goes. But as John says, Liverpool were the better side.
Yeah, we bumped into each other at half time, and I said to you, I thought we'd been terrific, and at the same time, I'm frightened because West Ham pose a threat. But we also had it in us to take that game far away from them. And I think if goal number 2 goes in, I think the lift in our confidence and the break in theirs, it could have been a 4-0 game. But although you'd expect them to hit something in along the line, not want to not mark the day and score. So maybe it'd have been 4-1. But we were good first half. Mo Salah had a very, very strange game, I thought. I think he's going through quite a strange time, and I think it does need a little bit of addressing. He's outside of his 2 pens at Leeds. He's only scored once in open play since he came back from the AFCON. Sadio Mane scored 4 times. So now we're going to talk about Sadio Mane. I thought Mo had some moments in that first half where he was facing up their defence and had 3 or 4 around him where he just looked like Maradona. And you sort of thought, but nothing's happening on the end of it. And I thought maybe we're not getting around him enough ourselves. Maybe this is why he wanted Harvey Elliott earlier in the season. And it brings in that conversation. But I thought second half, Salah was in his own head and Salah was playing his own game second half. And I thought there was a couple of moments where there was very, very simple opportunities to put teammates in and he thought, no, I've got to win this game on my own. I don't want to call it selfish. I just want to call it Mo taking on too much responsibility. But we've got to say the world's best player ain't playing that well at the moment.
I just want to come back to you on this idea of, I don't think it's selfish. I think, in the way in which we sometimes say of a player, especially a forward, he needs a goal.
Yeah.
I thought it was, I felt Mo had sort of got himself into his own mindset where he just needed a goal.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. So I think it's this really weird sort of, I don't even think it was necessarily even just to win the game on his own. I think there was just this thing in his head, I've missed the first half chances. I've got to score here. I've got to score. If I don't stick one on the back of the net, what's been the point of all this? And I think he can sometimes get into that mindset a little bit.
Well, yeah, it's a complex thing when people call strikers selfish because they define themselves, what you're saying is they define themselves by the goal, right? It's their duty to get the goal as much as it is part of, as much as it is part of their brand, to use that term. But he is a little bit in his own head. He's missed 2 in the last 8 days, including the one. The one in the League Cup finals on an absolute sitter. The one he lifts over the keeper that's cleared off the line. But I still felt even then at that point, in full flow, Mo Salah just scores that.
He scores that one. He scores a very similar goal against Pickford in the derby.
Yes, he does, and it's an easier chance against West Ham early on, and I think that gets into his head. Having said that, he has 20 minutes after that. Whereas just referenced, I thought he looked good. He looked like his touch was there. He was on it. But something's not quite right from in front of goal at the moment.
He reminded the performance, Salah's performance in general, it reminded me a little bit of the Leicester game, actually, previously mentioned, where he misses the penalty, misses the rebound for the penalty. Schmeichel makes a really good save. Liverpool that day don't find a way, and it's almost because it felt to me, like Mo's not there for us, and Liverpool weren't quite as fluent as they are now. For me, this is a positive at the minute. Liverpool are able to win a game, and win a game relatively unscathed, although we all felt like we felt scathed, but relatively unscathed, with Salah not playing particularly well in front of goal.
Well, that's the benefit of having 5 world-class forwards, I suppose, isn't it? That you can not have to just rely on the one guy, and Sadio's chipping him with some goals again now, which is good news, because that's the point of having so many good ones, is that when one's not quite at his fluid best, that the other one will stand up and do it for you. And we've had streaks in the season from Diogo Jota. We're having a little flourish at the moment from Mane, but on the Salah point, he's one for a player of his ability. There's an arrogance around Cristiano Ronaldo, but arrogance is quite often just self-belief, isn't it? But I think Salah is maybe one of the most anxious footballers I've ever seen. That lives games in his own head. And when he missed that chance, and it's like the first minute or something, isn't it? I thought, I hope he doesn't live the rest of this game in his head, and he does. And yes, there was signs of Mo at his sort of dribbling, menacing best, but I didn't truly believe in him at that stage, because you can just see that it eats away at him until he finds a way of getting a goal, and inevitably he will do that because of his outstanding ability. But that game of the weekend just wasn't one for Mo. But it's not something I'm going to lose sleep over, because he's so good that he will just find a way.
Yeah, he's a bit of a funny character, really. Like, I'm really surprised by this Ballon d'Or stuff in terms of what he's come out and said.
What did he say, John?
Basically, like, I can't believe I'm 7th. What a load of bollocks. Which is right.
Yeah.
But it's a bit of a weird thing for a footballer to come out with, like...
It's almost like the thing you don't say. That
Yeah.
Shrug it off, yeah.
Yeah. It's like, or just, so the normal footballer thing would be like, a little bit disappointed, but, look at the quality ahead of me, look at the... He's like, he's fuming, and like, and also come out and said it, and I just sort of feel like saying, like, don't worry about it, it's just some French footy Mike decided to do an award on a few years ago, and now it's a thing. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, but it obviously does. I think there is like a bit of, insecurity in there. Maybe it's a bit of an overhang for his career, and sort of, he wasn't the Messi or even the Ronaldo, sort of the big star. And I think that drives him, don't get me wrong. And I think his determination to continuously prove himself and prove maybe people wrong or all this thing, I think is genuinely a good thing. But I think there is times where it just sort of surprises you a little bit. You're like, oh, right, I didn't think he'd give a fuck about that, but he clearly does. And And I think this is maybe the reason I'm bringing him now is it's maybe linked to what we're talking about here, really, which is that he'll start to sort of, get into his own head a bit and feel like, I need to score here, to almost to prove a point, really, rather than sort of anything else. And then once he does, he always just chills out and he's fucking boss.
What was quite funny about that, sorry, Rob, was that even when it was announced that it was going to be that it was Messi, wasn't it, that won the Ballon d'Or, the manager goes on about Lewandowski should have won it. So it's not really I'd worry more about the manager in that sense. But no,
do you reckon he's fuming he's not won an award yet? I've just suddenly thought if we shunned him. You brought him into Liverpool.
Don't think he's up nights.
Nah.
But I could be wrong.
Everyone wants the minutes with Josh Sexton, don't they?
Mo's ambition is boundless.
Public vote, Mo, by the way. It's not to do with us.
we can't be. I think we can't be surprised by his ambition, and we're beneficiaries of it. But it's going to have a certain look to it sometimes, which I'm not sure. I'm not saying we're not ready for, but Mo Salah, the Mo Salah show is important to Mo, and you can look at that as half full, or you should look at it as half full, not half empty. We can talk about how he wants to be the first African footballer to win the Ballon d'Or, how that status as the man of his people is so important to him. You can be cynical and go, look, at the end of the day, he just wants to be the richest, greatest guy in the world, and he's being selfish trying to do it. And I think yeah. And you know what? Either way, whatever is in Mo's head, whatever journey he's on, it just has worked for us, and I'm not going to get on his case about it, other than to say that when it doesn't work, Mo, we want it to keep working.
Is this the worst problem we've got, though? Is this actually a positive, that ambitious striker who's definitely one of the top players in the world gets a cob on for missing simple chance? Then that's a great position to be in, really, isn't it? I mean, this is Mo Salah's character. He's not changed. He's always been this way, really. We had it the other year with him and Mane at Burnley, didn't we? I think the optics of it is because our guys are sort of the ones that you would take home to your mum. That when Mo gets a bit of a cob on, you're like, you wouldn't see our lovely Jordan Henderson do that or whatnot, but
I think what also it speaks to is he clearly sees the context of him becoming the best footballer in the world at Liverpool Football Club. I know I don't want to digress us onto that contract discussion, but I think all the senses are that he knows that. Whether Liverpool agree as much as he does, but the fact that he thinks that says everything you need to know about modern Liverpool. They were one of the top two sides in Europe, the world.
And the other one he can't sign for.
Yeah.
The other thing that comes out of the game in a big way is controversy / chatter around the offside trap, John. In one sense, I think it's amazing what they've been doing. I think it's unique and I think it's unbelievably ambitious. I think it's the sort of thing that, it's a metric that Liverpool outstrip everybody else in to such a degree. To such a degree, it's ludicrous how often they catch people out. I've been thinking about it after the weekend and thinking about it as a lived experience in the ground. And what it actually reminds me of, someone said to me a couple of weeks ago when Liverpool were knocking it around at the back, and drawing the teams on. Remember what this was like when Rodgers was trying to do this, and everyone would have kittens every week. Everyone would be up the wall that you would even think about doing what Liverpool were doing back in 2012, even though a few other sides in Europe were doing it. And it sort of strikes me that to an extent, in terms of the lived experience for a group of supporters, for a crowd, because of the stuff around the late flags as well, it is the new passing it out from the back, really. It isn't ropey, but when you're watching it, you feel like this is ropey. And I think it might actually have been a little bit ropey on Saturday, but we'll come back onto that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think in terms of the conversation around it, I don't think it's as bad as people are making out, in that people are talking about it, but more of a thing of interest, really. It's not the zonal marking stuff, which was just bananas, where everyone decided zonal marking was the most ridiculous thing, and why on earth would this European Cup manager be doing it? I don't think it is that. I think people are just onto what we're doing, onto how high we are, but also, as you said, Neil, before, that the stats are just sort of through the roof. So people are talking about it a lot, and I'm seeing almost people, they keep banging on about this. It's because it's fucking dead interesting, do you know what I mean? I'm not seeing many people, pundits and stuff go on the telly saying, I don't understand why Liverpool are doing this. I think it is just a genuine talking point at the moment, because it's a team doing something markedly different to everyone else, and the results sort of show that. In terms of in the ground, I mean, it's not helped by the delete flag stuff, is it? The assistants have been asked to do it. It's not, but you just sort of, I think even with that, people are getting a little bit more used to it, and they just back the lads. You mentioned there Rodgers. We were trying to do that with Martin Skirtle and even Carragher I think, come out and said, like, I didn't really fancy it at 34. Do you know what I mean? I've been playing my whole career a certain way.
But also Mignolet as well.
Yeah,
I'm not Alisson Becker, but I think Liverpool really changed and really stepped that high line. Sort of, let's play the offside trap. When we brought VAR in, I think that was a belief from the manager that he's quite, he's quite a forward-thinking manager in terms of let's use every attribute in the whole game to our advantage. Well, I trust the players. I trust Van Dijk and Matip or Van Dijk, Konate, whoever it is, to get that bit right. But in the past, there was such margin for error because it was human error. Is that on? Is that off? Well, the computer tells you now. Sometimes there's a conversation around the lines not being particularly drawn right, but you're willing to take that risk, aren't you? So if that is offside, I trust that my guy's going to hold the correct line to get them in behind. But actually, if the line doesn't put his flag up, I'm pretty sure the VAR is going to go in our favour. And that for me was really when we went, okay, this is the high line that we can trust, and we can gamble a bit more with it because you've removed that human error so much.
I thought, did anyone see the Slaven Bilic punditry on it? I thought he was really good on it. It was actually quite a simple but correct analysis. It's not just the risk strategy. It's the fact that the fullbacks are so. We're basically playing a 3-4-3, but we're cheating in to use new money. The middle centre half is gone. He's gone forward. He's into midfield. So with the fullbacks are so high up the pitch that if you play that high line and you've got 3 to cover, that's a lot easier than if you've got 2 to cover. So we're sort of leaving a great big gaping hole. But in front of the gaping hole, we've got Fabinho, the human spider in midfield, and behind the gaping hole, we've got the sweeper keeper, who's incredibly good at it. I mean, West Ham, the key chance that everyone has kittens about, at the end of the day, it's not an accident that Alisson Becker does just enough to stop him scoring, because he's so fucking quick out. The guy quickly realises his options are all but to lob him, which he does, to his best of his ability, but that gives Trent the chance to come back. So there's not accidents happening there. I mean, watching United yesterday, watching De Gea giving his usual sort of show pony, throwing himself about, making routine saves look hard. But when the ball's over the top and they're trying to push up, he's nowhere to be seen, or he's so late coming out that he barely...
He missed one, didn't he?
Yeah. Yes, it's a vulnerability, but it gives us those numbers in attack. And we can't underestimate it. It's a simple science. If you've got bodies in attack and you can put balls into a box, the percentages are in your favour.
Well, you've got that thing now, haven't you? It was no surprise to me when we signed Fabinho that he'd signed a whole midfielder that played right back, earlier on in his career, because there's so much said about transition now. When Liverpool transition from the defensive unit into the attacking unit, Fabinho can almost swap with Trent Alexander-Arnold, and you get Robertson joining the front line and Trent joining in deep with the midfield. It just makes total sense. So this risk with the high line, I seen Miguel Delaney talking about it the weekend. That almost like it looks ropey. It's completely by design. Transfer policy has been built around allowing this, and sometimes you get it wrong, but we'll look at the stats. We don't get much wrong in terms of the goal difference, do we?
It's a lot of clean sheets since the turn of the year, John, and I think it is predicated on the VAR. And I'll say it again. I think it is genuinely incredible what they're doing. I think it is, the drilling on it, and I think it's interesting to me that it feels like it's got better as the seasons wore on. The more they've done it, they've got more data, they're working stuff out. The one thing I would say is it can be the right approach, and I think it is. We can acknowledge it's high risk. I think we would, but we can also think that this is the right thing for Liverpool to do. They maybe don't quite get it quite right on Saturday as well, and that's why I think it is an interesting discussion, because it will just happen every now and again, in the same way that it happens with the way in which you attack, with the way in which you want for a better midfield. Yeah. You'll have a bit of an off. We've just talked about Salah having a bit of an off day. A bit of an off day is possible, and that's where I think, and I don't think it's that much of an off day on Saturday, don't get me wrong, and I actually think it's much better second half. You think about West Ham's 2 chances second half. The Lanzini one doesn't really come from this. The Antonio one comes from break from a corner. Your centre halves are nowhere to be seen. They're further up the pitch, if you know what I mean. I think that there's the first half incident, there's the smell of it in the air, but there's not actually that much second half from it. I think Liverpool defend well second half.
They do, yeah, and I think, on your points around, not getting it perfect, wherever you set your line, you can make mistakes, and so it's more, I think, apparent if it's high, because people are sort of, looking at it with a bit more scrutiny. Again, to go back to the zonal marking thing, when it went wrong, it was the fault of the system, and when with man-to-man, it's the fault of the player. Do you know what I mean? It's like, so people are sort of, doing a bit more scrutiny because it's a little bit different, but I think, you could set your line on the 6-yard box and someone could be deeper, or someone could, not sort of get it right, and you can... and you can end up sort of conceding a goal, and so it can always sort of go wrong, slightly wrong, whatever you do. But as long as they're there to sort it, as long as they're bailing each other out, which I agree with Rob, they did massively at the weekend at sort of different moments, then you'll sort of work it out, really. I think it has got better through the season. I thought there was a couple of times, Robertson got a bit stick early this season, didn't he, for being in sort of a touch deeper. When was the last time anyone said that? I mean, maybe, it's maybe I'm sort of jinxing him a little bit there, but, there was quite a bit thrown the season. Robertson, he's a bit too deep on these situations, but that seems to be gone. There's a couple of times the fullbacks could have been a bit narrower, I think, in certain situations, but these are split-second things, isn't he? When we look at the replays, it's paused, and he's there, but the game's moving around and sort of so fast. I think as well, where they deserve a lot of credit. You said there, Neil, about how well it's going. We've had defenders coming in and out all season as well. Do you know what I mean? This isn't like a settled back four, because it can't be, because the number of games we've got. So we've had Chimika's coming in. We've had the three centre halves are almost on rotation at the moment, aren't they? Well, Virgil plays wherever he can, but the other two he's sort of bringing sort of in and out, horses for courses. You've obviously got Gomez coming in against Norwich, Milner playing right back, and it doesn't seem to matter too much who they sort of bring in, that they're able to play. But the most important thing is the conviction, isn't it? It's like, we're going to do this, and whatever you try, if it's a bit unusual, you've got to sort of fully commit. And I think that's where Virgil really helps, because he tells them all everything's going to be all right, and they believe him.
Yeah, and all the focus when it's analysed is always about what the centre halves are doing right or wrong, isn't it? But the truth is, those chances, of which that West Ham one in the first half is the quintessential example of when it's breached, is all about really what the pressure you put or not on the number 6, because the ball always comes from the number 6 position, doesn't it? It's a ball over the top.
All the fullbacks, because Johnson. Yeah. But my point is, I think you're right. Yeah. What I thought was interesting, to be fair to West Ham, they had at times Lanzini and Bowen really narrow in the middle of the park, and what they were doing was they were overloading in the middle of the park, because I think their aim was, if there's enough of us, we pass the ball to one another, maybe someone beats the man, we move it again, and then there'll be a bit of space to try and do this. And I thought it was really interesting tactically from West Ham. I thought they had that idea of, all right, we'll have Souček in there as well, we'll have Fornals in there, we'll have Lanzini in there, we'll have Bowen in there, they'll all be really close together, because if we pop it off, it finally works. We might just have a yard and a half where someone can then go and hit a runner. But they've got to be practically perfect to do that. And if we nick it back in that little passage of play, again, this is everything's risk and reward.
Yeah, but we can't switch off in the second counter press in the transition. That's where there's a lot of pressure on, particularly the number 8s, in my opinion, on Naby and Jordan. And if they've just been dragged wide or somewhere, that's the vulnerability. But that's the gamble. And again, then you trust your centre halves to be watching, knowing when to drop, when not to.
We're talking here, and I think the more we see this side, it's fascinating to me, Paul. There's so much about this side. Individual players, moments where there's an unbelievable level of unorthodoxy. You mentioned Fabinho before with his ability to shift along. Henderson, I think, has got the same thing. He can play 3 positions in a game. For me, one of the best examples of the unorthodoxy of this Liverpool side is what the fellow at right back's doing. I think it's astonishing what he's doing. I've seen a lot of people saying he's redefining the role. I actually don't think he is redefining the role, because if he was redefining the role, it would make it possible for other footballers to do it. Yeah. I don't think there's 10 players on the planet who could do what he does. I genuinely don't. I don't think that in 10 years' time there'll be loads of people playing right back like Trent Alexander-Arnold, because I think pretty much only Trent Alexander-Arnold can play right back like Trent Alexander-Arnold.
Yeah, I don't, that who wants to grow up and be a right back thing. Well, loads of kids now, but whether they can actually achieve that or not, you're right. I'm not sure it's possible. Is Trent Alexander-Arnold a right back? Well, he is in traditional formations, but I've not seen anything like him, really. He's like a hybrid of a very competent defensive right back now, it must be said, because his defending, for me, has gone through the roof.
Absolutely.
And we've seen a lot of evidence of that in big games recently, but just he really looks like a mature footballer now. Just his passing decisions and some of the crossfield balls and stuff he's doing, which I know he can do, but it's how simple it looks for me, as well as all the obvious stuff with the assists. And he's just a remarkable footballer who's still so bloody young, and this shouldn't be him anywhere near his peak. So what's his peak going to look like? I just don't know. He's wonderful. It's a joy to watch him, sort of, from that game at Swindon where I think I was calling him Trent Arnold-Alexander. I couldn't quite get his name right, to where he is now, from a player that Marcus Rashford had the better of, and now just would not happen. You know, what a joy.
He's defensive. He's become defensively as a right back, but offensively he's a midfield player, isn't he? Really now, he's not. There's no example of how to become a perfect right back going forward. Watching Trent Alexander-Arnold, it's a different. But he's almost got a free role. It's almost like if you picked a young Cristiano Ronaldo at 22 and said you're going to play a defensive-ish position in midfield. What you're going to do is I'll do everything really well. Going back towards his own goal, he's a right back, and really, I think exactly what you say. He's getting so good, but that's because of his pace and his power, his muscularity, but also his concentration.
Rob, that muscularity thing is something I really noticed in his interview after the game at the weekend. He's an absolute unit.
Yeah,
he's massive now compared to where he was. I met him a couple of years ago, and I thought I'd knock you about a bit. He's absolutely doing me in now. You know, he's massive.
It's good to see that humility. Go on.
You see that though in the I have to say this, not often talked about maybe, but the development of Liverpool in the way that they train and the gym work they're doing. There's a lot of these boys who get bigger when they come to Liverpool. But they're not slowing down. They're getting more explosive. You know, so this is best of all worlds. Often you see, young players putting on a bit of muscle and getting too heavy for it, but not happening. He's getting more explosive.
On that point, he was a young.
It's all right, Paul.
I'm a big lad. I'd have him.
It is a funny thing to think when you meet a footballer, though. Could I batter him?
It's a really weird thing to think. I'm sorry.
I didn't mean that like that. I meant like in the air, I'd knock him off the ball or something. But now you look at some of them, and they're so slight, aren't they?
They are slight.
You look at Jota, for example. He's not massive. I know a close personal friend of yours now, John, but he's he is massive, Trent, now. Like
I was going to say, see Trent next to Josh.
Well, Josh wouldn't knock him off the ball.
There is, for me, Paul mentions the crossfield balls, John, and one of the things I noticed, and it was there in a couple of Thiago's recently, again in this idea, the way Liverpool play is there's a lot of risk reward. I've noticed how many are almost graze in the heads of the opposition defenders. Like, we're going to make you think you can possibly get this, but the reality is you're never getting it. So you'll throw everything you've got at this, and you'll take yourself out of position. And I genuinely don't think I'm overanalyzing this. You know, Liverpool think so much about what they do and what the opposition are going to do in and out of possession. A lot of these balls, I think, are so full of precision in that it's just dangling a carrot. You could get this, and then when the player comes to get near it, and for me, Trent's absolutely perfect at it. And the number of times you'll see the opposition fullback go for a ball that's always going to go to Andy Robertson. You know it's going to go to Andy Robertson. We know it's going to Andy Robertson. Trent knows it's going to Andy Robertson. But there's just a moment where the fullback goes, I can win that.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. And I think also the pace that we're hitting them, and as you say, the trajectory, are just meaning we're able to sort of go straight on the attack. And sort of, in our worst days, I remember seeing, these floated balls from, say, Jamie Redknapp out to the left wing, and the fella would chest it down, and by the time he got it down, the fella would come and tap him, and everyone would give a round of applause to the pass because he made a 40-yard pass to someone. And even as a kid, I'm thinking, but we've lost the ball. Do you know what I mean? Because the amount of time it takes to get there, and then the lad to bring it down, and then to get it in control. I mean, it helps the touch of this team from 1 to 11. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Like they're in a, it feels like they're in a one-team showboating competition sometimes, isn't it, for the stuff that they can bring down. So they all know they can absolutely, ram it towards each other. But I think because of that, and because the balls are so good in it, with that trajectory, it's boom, one touch out, and we're on the attack, rather than, I'm going to get this down, and suddenly this sort of defenders running at me. So I think the way we're hitting those passes, as well as the regularity of them, and the fact that they just know they're there. Half the time, Trent's not even looking. He's in a situation where, he's analysing what's around him in terms of short passes. Where's Mo? Where's my ball? All right, it's not there. Boom, I'll just hit it over there because I know for a fact Andy Robertson's there, and it's a lovely position to be in.
Next player I want to talk about off the back of this game, Rob, is Naby Keita. He gets thrown in at the deep end against Chelsea. Has a ropey 10. He comes up against N'Golo Kante, who's literally one of the best ones that you could ever possibly face in a game. But then he pushes him back, grows into the game, really plays his part in the eventual victory. And it felt like another excellent game from him, and it feels as though he's beginning to amass excellent games for Liverpool now. A lot of them, they're not defined by a moment, although he does make the excellent tackle in this one, They're not defined by a great goal or a great bit of skill. They're just repeated performances that very much help this team win games.
Yeah, it's been an interesting season for him. It's his fourth, isn't it, I think, and it feels like his first, because he's never got going in any others. He's been available for virtually every game, I'd say, this season, bar a few. You still expect the odd scare. He wasn't expected to play. I was surprised to see his name on the team sheet. But he's given us the full range, I think, of what he can do this season. I think in the early stages of the season, right through to the Old Trafford 5-0, I think we saw the best of his attacking play. He scored 3 early on. He was very creative, breaking the lines at Man U that day and in a couple of games around that. Then he has a couple of those in and out performances. But recently, he's been doing, I wouldn't say it's a Gini Wijnaldum impression, but he's been doing a really good low-key impression. I do wonder with our midfielders, there comes points, you can see it with Curtis Jones as well, you saw it with Wijnaldum early on in his Liverpool career, where Klopp just says to them, I don't need you to win games for me, I need you to do the fucking running, quite frankly. The running and concentrating and pressing. That's your job, really. Every now and again, yeah. But make sure you're doing all the other things first and foremost. And maybe that simplicity of instruction, in a sense, gradually gets the improvement in performance, which I now think we're seeing from him. I think I would like to see much more from him. I think there's much more to come if he can stay fit. I think he can be the complete Klopp midfielder. But he needs to stay fit, he needs to focus, and he might need to sign another contract if we want him to.
I agree with Robin that I wouldn't like to see him completely lose the side of the game that we know he's got. I think he's doing a great job for the team at the moment, and I think, his performance at the weekend was excellent, and it was exactly what was needed in that time. But when he is fit, he's able to do something that not many of our midfielders, I don't think, can do in terms of carrying the ball, in terms of running with it head up. He's moving across, his vision's excellent, and that's a real asset and a real rare asset, in the Premier League. And so I think I wouldn't like to see him, in the same sort of way when Gini used to go away with Holland and he'd be like, why is he scoring every week? We won't mind a bit of this. Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't like to see him, completely sort of losing that, because I think that can be an asset to the team as well. I accept completely that the team comes first, and if Jurgen needs him to do this and he's sort of willing to do it and we're winning games, then great. But I think, that other stuff can be an asset to the team as well. So I think it's about picking and choosing, really. And if he goes a bit back to basics and then we're able to sort of build it up a little bit from there to say, right, you feel like you've got this now, just choose your moments to carry the ball in and to keep them on their toes. And when they're expecting you to just go wide with the ball, suddenly you're sort of carrying it and you're giving them more to think about. I'd like to see that to be the next step of his evolution, if you like, as a Liverpool midfielder. But like Rob says, to do that, you'd almost need to be playing week in, week out and keeping his fitness and keeping himself in the team.
But I think that keeping himself in the team is the important bit. This little Thiago injury served him well, Naby in a way, hasn't it?
Ongoing Thiago injuries, quite frankly.
Well, they are ongoing, yeah. But Keita can't judge that by that standard, can he? Because he's been in exactly the same sort of situation. But it is nice to see him fit. But I think what you said about Wijnaldum was a point I was going to make, John. Is yes, Gini still had that in his locker, but you sometimes have to sacrifice part of your game to get a game for the team, and that the Naby Keita we're seeing at the moment isn't doing the things that maybe catch your eye or it sort of gets you excited about him, but he's doing the nitty-gritty stuff that will keep him as an option for the team and in the team. And
Klopp would have loved that performance.
Oh, he really would. And I've been a doubter of Keita, audibly a doubter of Keita for a long time. It's just not right, the job he's doing for the football team, but the job he's doing, especially against Chelsea at the game of the weekend, I think he's been magnificent. And he's one that you go, well, have you seen Curtis Jones off? Well, it seems like he has seen Curtis Jones off. Even Oxlade-Chamberlain was getting games ahead of him, but he's not at the moment, and rightfully so, because he's playing so well. And if there's a big game at the weekend and Thiago's just fit, but Naby is fit, then I start Naby.
His advantage, his advantage he has over some of the other names you'd mentioned there is outside of Fabinho and Henderson, Thiago, he's the next midfielder. All the others, Elliott, Jones, Chamberlain, they're not really midfield players, are they? They're all players who've been adapted to be midfield players in a Klopp system. So it is very much a position he can begin to claim, if he rides the misfortune that Thiago's having, which he once had, as you said.
Last one I want to talk about before we get into Inter Milan, John, is Sadio Mane. It's another goal at number 9.
Can we do Luis Diaz as well in a minute, please?
We're going to do it in the context of talking about Mane. We're going to talk about Diaz off the left. Don't worry at all. It's another goal at number 9. I've written it down there for you.
Oh, yeah.
His approach to it is interesting in that you can drive yourself mad. I've said this a couple of times recently, that you can end up sort of wanting this dream number 9 that you literally build with parts, because you go, oh, I quite like the ruthlessness of Jota combined with the link play of Firmino and the pace and presence of Sadio. Do you know what I mean? But I like how he's doing it. I really do. I hope he starts there against Inter. To be honest with you, I think Diaz off the left is blossoming massively as well as a constant threat.
Yeah, I mean, you talked before about the goal being better on the telly, and Sadio's movement's excellent.
Yeah.
You know, when we had a nice view of it where we were sat, in terms of seeing it sort of go in, but in your head, as you say, it's a shot that goes wrong, and he's just stood there ready to put it in. Whereas actually, his movement's phenomenal. He goes just at the right time to stay just onside, and he's just there to tap it in, and it's a proper number 9's goal. Rather than just kind of one sort of, where he just happens to be in the right place at the right time. It's judgment from him, when you watch it back. And he's got good number 9 instincts in terms of, all the forwards we've got. And as you say, they all offer a bit of everything, and they're all brilliant in their own way. I think he sort of naturally has maybe the best sort of number 9 instinct in those situations. And I like him there. I think he's strong. I think he's probably the happiest of the lot, maybe with the exception of Jota not touching the ball for a while, and I think that's fine as well, because that can sometimes happen as a 9. You're not sort of in the game as much as you like, but I think he backs himself to make an impact when he can. And as Rob mentioned before about his return since he's come back, you can't argue with it. Yes, we've all seen Manny probably at a slightly higher level than what we're getting at the moment in terms of his Liverpool career, but he's certainly scoring the goals, he's certainly making an impact, and he's the match winner at the weekend effectively, isn't he?
I think it might have saved his Liverpool career, if I'm honest, and that's not saying that people were finished with him, but it's...
I don't think he was quite sure where he was going on.
But when you sign Diaz, you want to see him, Diaz, and obviously he started really well. But I think when people are putting the sort of hypothetical Liverpool teams together, Mane was the one I was often hearing that wasn't in it, and I think if it's Manchester City tomorrow or Champions League final or whatnot, I think the front 3 that starts at the weekend is the front 3 that starts in that game. I think that's the one where the managers really trust them, and you see a lot of a link up in between the historical link up between Salah and Mane, which is good. But there's a new dynamic now with Diaz as well, which is a lot rawer, a lot more direct. But it's another injection of pace, which has dropped off, I would say, for Sadio. But since he's come back from AFCON, I think he's been great, because there was times earlier on in the season where I was vying us to sign someone in that left-hand side position, when we've done that and reinvented Sadio at the same time, and I think that's a great thing.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think you're absolutely right. It was getting towards, is his career going to need saving time? He's always, we talked about this a few times, he's always had natural number 9 instincts. I also like the fact that, he doesn't do what Bobby does as symmetrically as we might like. But he gives you better hold up play sometimes in a Mikel Antonio kind of way, because he's a unit quietly, Sadio, isn't he? He's got the big shoulders. You can knock the ball in, and he can keep the ball in a good.
I wouldn't knock him off the ball.
No, knocking into his feet in a good old fashioned centre forward sort of way. Yes, his touch was a bit weird in the first half, because he thought he was out on the left wing at times, where he's actually in the middle. So sometimes Sadio's first touch is a deliberate mistouch, isn't it? It takes it away from a fullback in the centre. It's not so obvious. But the Diaz thing is where now you're giving me my stage to talk about Diaz. I mean, everyone is universally, I think, delighted with him. I've heard a little bit of damning with faint praise going, he's a wild, I think a couple of shows people have referenced he's a wild card. We haven't had a wild card for it. I don't think he's a wild card. I think he's a measured, sensational footballer. I think he's more Liverpool than Liverpool have had to date. I think he's at the next stage of the revolution, the evolution. His movement and his pace is, it's going to give all of our current front 3 something to think about. He gives it and goes. He tears into people. I mean, in a sense, he has the effervescence of the first incarnation of Mane who had when he came, which I sometimes miss occasionally. It was so much pace, so much directness. I love everything that Diaz is doing. The run in the first half he was on the verge of writing himself into absolute Liverpool legendhood, apart from some blurt knocks him over on the edge of the box, which was about to happen, but it'd been a penalty, which it was very close to being. You know, so
I think the Blurt knew where the lines were.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's a risky game to play.
See what you want about the Blurt.
Yeah,
it's a risky game to play. Was it the cat fella? I don't know which one was it. And you know, in the second half, he actually near all but puts one on a plate for Salah with a mazy little run. I just thought he was sensational.
They're always the most exciting football. Like you appreciate what Verge does. You know, Thiago, they make you pair a little bit. When you get a sort of raw, fast, exciting, wide footballer, they're the ones you just go. They're the ones when you're walking into the ground, you go, I can't wait to watch you play football.
It's his off the ball, though, I love. It's his off the ball. It's when he's giving it. He's then sprinting into some area, which is making people go, what the fuck?
He does something really, I can't remember exactly what it was, but down in the left-back position as well, where he's got himself out and put Liverpool back on the front foot again. Yeah, every week I go into the ground and I'm hoping to see the team with his name in, and I think that's such a great thing with a footballer, because after time you take for granted that you're going to get to see Mo Salah or Virgil van Dijk that day, don't you? But when you get a new signing that you're walking through the turnstile going, yes, let me see him again today. That's brilliant.
Okay, just quickly on Mane, since the turn of the year, including the game against Chelsea, is expected goals per shot from open play is 0.26, i.e. every shot he's taken on, he's got a better than 1 in 4 chance of scoring, which I think is suggestive of the positions he's taken up in the pitch and around the penalty area. More on that on our stats show, which is available. Looking back on the game against West Ham United and other bits and pieces as well. As I said before, if you download the Anfield Wrap app, you can see that sort of thing all the way through there. A shout out for the fact that we're doing a live show in Brighton next Saturday. Friday. Sorry, excellent stuff, John. We play Brighton on Saturday. The show is not the game, so it is Brighton on. It is.
We're the main event. There's something else happening the day after.
Just some running around that. So that on Saturday morning, Liverpool will play Brighton, but on Friday night we will be in Brighton doing a live show, which we're really, really excited by. With the Brighton Cop, it's always a pleasure to go down there. Tickets are available for that, and we are going to Ireland. We're going to Ireland and we're doing live shows in Warrenpoint, Belfast, Dublin and Cork. It is the international break through there as well. I think we've yet again managed to play Dublin the same day that Ireland play a game of football, but frankly the fucking crap and the Reds are brilliant. So you've just got to get your priorities in order as far as I'm concerned. So you can definitely get to one of those if you are over there. Warrenpoint, Belfast, Dublin and Cork. Thursday, Friday, Saturday and Sunday. You'll be able to find out from all of our social media where that is, on emails and all of that sort of stuff. A shout out as well for the Crosby Stewart's Under-10s fundraiser for the Breen Sands football tournament. It is the 29th of April to the 2nd of May. There'll be a bucket collection of taggies tomorrow. There is a GoFundMe which you can find, Girls Under-10 football tournament. I'll make sure the link goes out for that. This is brought to my attention by Mr. Andrew Heaton, whose daughter Francesca Heaton will be playing in said Girls Under-10s tournament. Francesca Heaton is the most naturally gifted and talented goalkeeper in the country with the surname of Heaton. Better than Tom, more agile than Andy. There is a lot to be said for Francesca Heaton. Crosby Stewart's Under-10s.
More than him now as well.
I've heard there's been a recent booking for Descent, is what I've been told. Apples do not fall far from trees, ladies and gentlemen. So that is all ready for you. If you're in Taggies, listen, lash something in a bucket so that the Crosby Stewart Under-10s can have a great time at the Breen Sands football tournament. And as I say, Andy will tweet out the link for it as well if you want to support girls Under-10s football. Crosby Stewart, no less. A fine place. I think I scored 27 goals for their B team at the age of 6. Anyway,
thank you. Is there a plaque or something?
No. Trust me, there was at that level. That's not enough goals.
Is it?
You lost 7-5.
This is this is the way in which it works. Anyway, Inter Milan then. What are we expecting from the lineup in this one as it comes through? I don't think you're getting Diaz.
No, probably not. No, but that's fine because we've got another big game at the weekend, haven't we? In the context of the Premier League game is that when you're going into the Champions League game 2-0 up, that maybe you can take that little risk. And no, I would imagine you see Diogo Jota start in that game, and probably at Luis Diaz's expense. So
if he starts Jota, do you think he starts Jota left and Mane through the middle, or do you think he starts Jota through the middle and Mane left?
I don't actually think there's too much importance on that, if I'm honest, because there's so much fluidity. Because look at what Diaz is doing in terms of coming central, and I think it's all once again part of the Liverpool benefit of having a manager at the club for so long that's doing such great tactical things that everything's interchangeable, isn't it? Whether it's Fabinho for Trent or whether it's Mane and Jota, it's all good. Yeah, well, I think coming into the game, that result of the San Siro, which feels like an age ago, by the way, is enormous. They had a decent result. It was a Friday night they played.
5-0, they beat South.
5-0. But this is a different test for Inter. They hadn't scored in a number of games before that game, and they're up against a formidable opposition at Anfield. I just think the only thing we as a fan base can do is think it's won. It was a difficult game at the San Siro. It'll be a test again. So you can't go in there on your deck chair. But we're in a very strong position.
What are you expecting team-wise? Are you expecting Matip to come back in? Are you expecting...
It's a tough one,
consistency with the full-backs? I think we get consistency with the full-backs.
Was not in the squad just a precaution, was it?
No, he was ill. He was ill. You can't pick this team in isolation because of the next two are massive Premier League games for us. Arguably, we've got Brighton away and we've got Arsenal away in the next two after it. Arguably, it's the least important of the three. Well, it's the least important of the three in the sense that we can lose it 1-0 and still progress, but it's also one you don't want to take no risks with simultaneously. I feel he will be working backwards from Arsenal because that's the toughest of these games. Arsenal away next week. I wouldn't be surprised to see any of Saturday's starters rested. And
with the exception of Salah, who takes off relatively early.
Yeah, he's the least likely. So Jota could come in for either Mane or Diaz. I mean, again, let's not forget the five sub aspect in this. So talking about a starting 11 is that's not a technicality, but these sort of games where you don't make a change on 65, 70, you make a change on 55, maybe even one at half time sometimes. So I don't know with the front three. Oh, why is my phone doing that to me? It's reminded me to buy football tickets, I think. And midfield, again, he could go again with a view to thinking, hopefully having Thiago fit for Brighton and Arsenal. He could decide Henderson, who played against Norwich in the week last week, could do with a rest this one or come on 60 or whatever. And at the back, I don't know about the Matip Konate thing either. I have no answers, just questions for you.
He plays Konate in the San Siro and he plays Elliott in the San Siro, and I wouldn't be surprised to see both start again.
Wouldn't surprise me to see Oxlade-Chamberlain start.
No,
he's the least likely in my opinion because I think he's in the most fragile form of them. Although he did score two not so long ago.
What do you think he's doing?
I don't know, to be honest with you, Neil. I think there'll be a surprise, but the almost, the biggest surprise of all would be if he picks the same 11. I think that would be the biggest sort of shock. So I think there'll be one where you're like, didn't necessarily see that coming. The five subs thing's interesting in that would you either go stronger then take lads off, on 60 if we're ahead, but what if you're not? I think we might be a little bit, not stung, but a bit conscious of the Norwich game in that, we're all fine with 2-0. He takes Henderson off and Morton and suddenly they get one back and he's like, shit, could I bring him back on? And you're not allowed. I've looked. And so he might just think, actually, I'd rather hold the cavalry back if I feel like I need them, rather than have a situation where, we're 0-0 on 60. The game's looking pretty dead, to be honest with you. I take a couple of lads off, suddenly they score and everyone's shitting themselves. So that's something that we need to be, conscious of. It's not as easy as, just go 2-0 up and then take lads off. Or what if you don't? And I think Jurgen's a bit more conscious of what if you don't than sometimes some of the supporters are.
There could be a Minamino move as well. He is in good form, and that's I know he's been a domestic cup sort of starter, but that could be one where he goes, well, there's no risk. He's playing really well, and I feel like a good reward for him. I can see him going stronger than maybe we think. Try and get another goal. Obviously, there's no away goals. That's still a thing. Yeah.
Taki, Jota, and Salah off as a front three is pretty good.
It's better. Let's be honest. It's better than theirs, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's still great. When I've seen the manager in the Champions League take nothing for granted before. Was it a Porto game where you thought he was going to make
two dead robbers? He picks strong
teams. I just don't think in the Champions League he takes any risks, and I don't think he'll take a massive one.
You get weighed in as well, don't you?
If you win, yeah. Just last little thing is, we're all excited about it. Knockout European football back at Anfield. We missed it last year. It's happening.
I think it's a really good point, Neil, and I think we all need to remember that we didn't get it, and just because we're in a really good position doesn't make it any less special. Inter Milan's a big name, isn't it? They're coming to town. I'm looking forward to the city centre, filling up with Italians. It's going to knock Paul Senior's handsome ranking down. You know, only the 10th most handsome man in the city on the day, which will be a tough blow for him. He'll be fuming like Salah on social media.
Really will be.
Trying to substitute myself off the show, John.
I'll wait until you're late, so you know what I mean.
We're going to go through.
Yeah, this is one I don't want any overconfidence going into the game, and we all
I'm the same.
should have overconfidence.
There's a nightmarish scenario that they just score the first goal, and it genuinely is like it's a nightmarish scenario because the one thing you don't want is you don't want it where they only need 1 to force extra time on 80, and for me that is the key thing on this. Liverpool do not want them to score the first goal.
Yeah, I think their manager has an easy but a good team talk to give here.
Yeah.
He goes, they all think they're through. They think they've done this. We score first. Let's just watch them shut their pants.
Playing at Anfield's a massive deal. Like, remember that Velasco one and that lad named his dog Anfield or whatever it was. You know what I mean? It's like, we forget how big it is for them.
I have nightmares about Roma in, was it 2001?
Yeah, they were a good team.
They were top of the Italian league. Yeah. Mind you, it was the best Italian league.
The one I've got nightmares about is Benfica 06. That's always my reference point. Benfica 06, and that's why for me this is not done. This is a long way from done. I think if Liverpool score basically I think if it is the most a first goal game, and that's why I think he might go strong. I think if Liverpool score first, if you are the Milanese contingent, you begin to think, all right, we're just here to see this out and make sure we don't get embarrassed.
I think we go same again, Neil, with a view to if we get the job done with the first 11. Then we make all the subs. So.
No, it's fine. I am not. No, there should be no complacency whatsoever. Also, they've now played Liverpool once, and they will have, in the same way that we get the data, they get the data, and they'll have a few little things they'll have worked on, a few things to look forward to. I think it could be a nervier affair, and I think it's important Liverpool start well and start strong. Going to go through?
Yeah, I think so. I think we'll be all right.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key thing going into the game is that they can score first. Let's not forget that. But I fully expect us to put a mature performance in and win.
Excellent stuff. Thank you very much to Andy Heaton for producing, Rob Gutmann, Paul Senior and John Gibbons for contributing to this fantastic Anfield Wrap show. Do download the app. We're going to develop a new format where I'm going to list Premier League players and Paul Senior's going to tell me whether or not he knocked them off the ball. Jeffrey Schlupp, John McGinn, Neil Morpay, Lucas Rupp, Emerson Quarter Pounder with cheese. See you later.